Cleveland is spiraling into one of the wildest stretches the franchise has seen in years, and it feels like every hour adds a new layer to the chaos. One moment, people are debating Shedeur Sanders' future. The next, they're joking about the Browns season turning into a reality show. And now we've reached a point where national media outlets are openly discussing where Kevin Stefanski might work after he gets fired, before the man is even out the door. When an organization reaches that level of noise, something inside it has already cracked. But what makes this moment different is how fast the conversation flipped. Up until recently, there were still analysts defending the current structure. Now, the rumblings are everywhere. Reports, speculation, leaks, whatever you want to call it, are painting a picture of a franchise bracing for impact. And the craziest part? None of this hinges on whether they win or lose this week. According to some insiders, the decision might already be made. At the center of all this turmoil sits Shedeur Sanders, a rookie quarterback trying to grow in the middle of a storm he didn't create. His development has been scrutinized, questioned, and slowed by decisions fans still can't wrap their heads around. And now the pressure is hitting a point where every snap he takes might influence whether the Browns blow up the entire operation or try to salvage what's left. This isn't just another rough patch. It's the moment when a franchise has to decide whether it's building something real or just delaying the inevitable. And the signs emerging behind the scenes suggest the Browns are closer to a full reset than anyone imagined. Because once the speculation hits national outlets, once coaches start floating their names to other teams, and once fans start connecting dots, you're no longer dealing with rumors. You're dealing with fallout. And what unfolds next could reshape everything in Cleveland. The tension in Cleveland didn't start with a press conference or a leaked report. It started with whispers. Tiny rumblings that popped up across sports radio, fan forums, and insider feeds. At first, they sounded like the usual frustration that comes from a losing season. But the more people listened, the louder those rumblings became. And soon, the entire city was buzzing with the same uncomfortable question. Is Kevin Stefanski already done in Cleveland? What made the situation explode wasn't just the speculation, it was how early it started. Stefanski wasn't fired. He wasn't even on an official hot seat. Yet suddenly, national outlets were discussing where he might coach next, as if his departure were a foregone conclusion. Reports claim agents were privately floating his name. Some insiders said teams had interest, and that's when fans realized this wasn't just noise. This was a coach bracing for impact. The timing made it even more suspicious. Cleveland was still trying to develop Shedeur Sanders, still juggling injuries, still searching for any sign of stability. And out of nowhere, conversations shifted from fixing the Browns to where Stefanski might land once the Browns move on. It didn't feel like media speculation. It felt like preparation. Rumors suggest this wasn't coming from the Browns side at all. Instead, many believe this narrative was being pushed from Stefanski's camp, almost like he wanted the league to know he was available before the door officially closed. That move alone told fans everything they needed to know. For the first time, even Stefanski might sense the clock ticking on his tenure. And once that idea gained traction, fans didn't hold back. The Dillon Gabriel pick resurfaced, the mismanaged reps in training camp, the conservative play calling, the decision to restrict development instead of embracing it. Every frustration poured back into the spotlight, and suddenly the coaching staff wasn't just questionable. They were under a microscope. The rumblings had turned into a narrative. The narrative turned into pressure, and that pressure started reshaping every conversation about the Browns. But if Stefanski's future is uncertain, the next question becomes even bigger. What does all this mean for Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback caught right in the middle of this storm? And that's where the story gets even more complicated. If there's one name holding this entire franchise together right now, it's Shedeur Sanders. Not the front office, Not the coaching staff, not the veterans trying to survive another losing season. It's the rookie quarterback who somehow became the Browns' biggest hope and their biggest question mark at the exact same time. And that's what makes this situation so explosive. Because everything Cleveland does from this point forward connects directly back to Sanders, whether they want to admit it or not. And here's where the pressure really ramps up. Reports claim the Browns' decision-makers are split on what Sanders actually is. Some inside the building reportedly believe he has franchise tools if he's given the right coaching and a real runway. Others think he still plays at college speed, still hesitates on throws, and still isn't processing the game fast enough to be declared untouchable. Both sides have evidence, and both sides are using Sanders' next few games as ammunition for their argument. But here's the twist. Sanders isn't just competing with defenses. He's competing with time. Rumors suggest Cleveland's front office is prepared to take a quarterback in the upcoming draft if Sanders doesn't explode down the stretch. And we're not talking about small improvement. We're talking about a 5-game stretch that leaves no doubt. A run where Sanders looks less like a project and more like a solution. That's the bar. Fair or not, that's the expectation. At the same time, analysts keep pointing out something the Browns can't ignore. Sanders' growth is real. He's cleaner operationally. He's protecting the ball. He's reading defenses faster. He's finally starting to look like a quarterback who belongs in NFL speed rather than adjusting to it. But development in the NFL isn't linear. Even elite quarterbacks go through brutal stretches. The difference? They get the runway to figure it out. Sanders doesn't. And that's the heart of the Sanders equation. He has to convince a franchise on the verge of blowing everything up that he deserves to survive the reset. If he lights it up, he becomes the centerpiece of the rebuild. If he stumbles, even once, he becomes part of the uncertainty they're trying to escape. And the next section reveals why that pressure is directly tied to a collapsing regime that may not survive the month. If there's one moment that completely exposed how unstable Cleveland's decision-making has been, it was the 2025 NFL Draft. Because the Browns didn't just misjudge talent, they misread their entire future. And the ripple effects of those choices are now crashing directly into Shedeur Sanders' development, Stefanski's job security, and the identity of the franchise itself. The first warning sign came when the Browns used a top 100 pick on Dillon Gabriel. Even at the time, analysts questioned the move. Fans questioned it. Some scouts were stunned by it. And now, months later, it's being described as one of the clearest indicators that the Stefanski-Berry regime had completely lost the plot. Reports claim some in the building were split on Gabriel from the beginning, but the staff pushed it anyway. A decision that now looks more like desperation than strategy. What makes it worse is how the situation unfolded afterward. Gabriel struggled through camp, stringing together practices where he completed barely 20 to 30% of his passes while missing routine throws. Meanwhile, Shedeur, a 5th-round pick, reportedly ricked through reps with far more consistency and command, but still couldn't get equal opportunity. Rumors suggest this uneven distribution of reps wasn't accidental. It reflected the staff trying to justify a pick rather than develop the best quarterback. And now we're seeing the consequences. Shedeur entered the season underprepared, not because he lacked talent, but because the competition he should have been part of never happened. Instead of letting him grow through reps, the team tried to force a predetermined hierarchy that collapsed the moment the game started. Cleveland didn't just gamble on the wrong quarterback. They wasted valuable developmental time trying to make the wrong decision look right. Analysts are now pointing to this draft as the moment the Browns' downfall became inevitable. It raised questions about the front office, the coaching staff, and the evaluation process. It showed exactly why the franchise is stuck, scrambling at the end of the season, cramming development into a window that's far too small. Because when your draft mistakes are this big, this public, and this costly, they don't just affect one quarterback. They reshape the entire future of the franchise. And those errors set the stage for the next problem Cleveland can't escape: the offensive system Shedeur walked into. If you want to understand why Cleveland is stuck in this spiral, you have to trace the timeline of how this situation was handled from the very beginning. Because none of this chaos appeared out of thin air. It was built, piece by piece, through decisions that now look even worse in hindsight. And once you lay it all out, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. It started in the offseason, when the Browns entered camp with a quarterback room that didn't inspire confidence. The front office talked about open competition, about letting the best man rise, but that wasn't what happened. Instead, reps were handed out based on draft position rather than performance, with Dillon Gabriel getting opportunities that reports say he simply didn't earn. Rumors suggest coaches were baffled watching him complete a fraction of his throws, while the rookie behind him, Shedeur Sanders, looked noticeably sharper. Yet the reps didn't shift, the depth chart didn't budge, and the franchise doubled down on its original decision. Then came the preseason, where the cracks widened. Gabriel struggled again, and Sanders, despite flashes, was boxed into limited roles. Analysts questioned whether the staff was more focused on protecting their earlier choices than evaluating what was actually unfolding on the field. And as the season began, those early decisions turned into real consequences. Sanders entered the lineup without the foundational reps he should have had months earlier. Instead of a gradual ascent, he was dropped into the deep end and told to survive. That's not development. That's damage control. And the timeline kept unraveling. Game plans were built to avoid mistakes rather than create plays. Opportunities were pulled away from Sanders at critical moments. Offensive identity shifted weekly with no clear direction. And the coaching staff seemed to operate in panic mode, playing not to lose, coaching not to get fired, and making decisions that looked more about survival than growth. This is why so many fans are calling it mismanagement, not a rough patch. Because when you look back at how everything unfolded, the warning signs were there from day one. The reps, the inconsistency, the lack of trust, the hesitation to fully commit to the young quarterback the organization claims to believe in. And now the Browns find themselves scrambling to fix a problem they essentially created. But the next section reveals why this mismanagement isn't just hurting the present. It's clouding the entire future of the franchise. Shedeur Sanders isn't just playing football right now. He's surviving inside one of the tightest pressure cookers any young quarterback could walk into. Every snap he takes is being evaluated, dissected, and compared to what the Browns could do next spring with their first-round picks burning a hole in their pocket. And that reality has made his situation unlike anything most rookies ever face. He has no grace period, no development year, no time to stumble his way into growth. He either convinces the franchise he's worth building around, or the Browns reset the timeline again. And the clock is loud. Reports claim that Cleveland's front office wants clarity before the season ends. Rumors suggest they've already begun scouting the 2025 quarterback class, not because they've given up on Shedeur, but because they can't afford to get this decision wrong. Combine that with a coaching staff rumored to be on its last legs, and suddenly, Shedeur is stuck in a bizarre situation where he's not just playing for his career, he's playing through someone else's chaos. That's why every mistake he makes is amplified. Every hesitation on film becomes a talking point. Every missed throw becomes a reason for someone to say the Browns might need to look elsewhere. And yet, when you study the tape week by week, the improvement is clear. He's getting faster with his reads, cleaner with his mechanics, and calmer under pressure. Even analysts who've criticized him admit he's trending upward. But improvement alone won't save him. Not in this environment. He has to catch fire, and he has to do it now. The final stretch. Bears, Bills, Bengals, Steelers isn't just a schedule. It's his resume. If he lights up these defenses, especially the playoff-level ones, he instantly shifts the narrative. He buys himself security. He becomes the argument instead of the question mark. And that's why this moment feels so heavy. Because the Browns know what's at stake. Shedeur knows what's at stake. And the entire league is watching to see whether a rookie can carry the weight of a franchise desperately trying to figure out what its future even is. But the situation becomes even more complicated when you realize Shedeur might not just be fighting for his future. He might be fighting for the right to even finish the season as the starter. And that possibility changes everything. What's happening in Cleveland right now isn't just a coaching slump or a rough stretch of games. It's an organizational crisis playing out in real time, and everyone can feel it. The Browns aren't just losing, they're unraveling. And the most telling sign is that the rumblings about Kevin Stefanski's future aren't coming from fans anymore. They're leaking from places that usually stay silent until a decision is already made. Reports claim that certain voices in the league believe Stefanski's fate is sealed, regardless of what happens over the next few weeks. Even insiders who normally defend the staff are starting to change their tone. When the conversation shifts from "can he fix this?" to "where will he land after he's fired?" That's not speculation. It's a warning shot. And it's happening everywhere. The deeper issue is that Cleveland's problems aren't isolated to Stefanski alone. They extend into player development, roster construction, and the overall philosophy of how this franchise is trying to win games. Fans have watched questionable draft decisions, conservative game plans, and a pattern of avoiding genuine competition in training camp, all of which created the quarterback chaos they're dealing with now. Instead of grooming their rookies, the team spent valuable reps protecting veterans and chasing short-term survival. And now they're paying the price. Rumors suggest ownership is frustrated with the lack of direction. Analysts have said the front office looks divided on how to move forward. Even players appear confused about the team's identity. Are they rebuilding, competing, experimenting? No one knows. And when a franchise doesn't know its own plan, every mistake becomes amplified. That's why Shedeur Sanders is stuck in the middle of something much bigger than his development curve. He's not just fighting for a starting role. He's navigating a franchise trying to figure out what it wants to be. He's the bright spot, surrounded by uncertainty, and that puts an unfair amount of pressure on every snap he takes. But the biggest question isn't whether Stefanski survives the season. It's what Cleveland plans to do if he doesn't. Because once you clean house, everything changes. The playbook, the leadership, the quarterback evaluation, even the timeline for rebuilding. And the next section dives into the decision that could reshape the entire future of the Browns, starting with who actually has the power to make it. As the season drags toward its final stretch, the Browns aren't just staring at a losing record, they're staring at a complete identity crisis. The conversation around Kevin Stefanski isn't about adjustments anymore. It isn't about patience or long-term plans. It's about survival. And according to league insiders and growing whispers across national media, that survival window is shrinking fast. What once sounded like frustrated fan talk has now turned into a loud, steady drumbeat coming from major outlets. The Browns are heading toward a full reset. Not a tweak, not a tika. Minor reshuffle. A complete teardown of the coaching structure that built this mess. And the most telling part? These leaks aren't coming from the Browns side. Reports suggest they originated from Stefanski's camp. An early attempt to gauge interest, test the market, and soften the blow before the inevitable hits. That alone says everything. When a coach begins floating his name out there while still employed, it usually means two things. The writing is on the wall, and the fear inside the building has finally reached a breaking point. It's almost exactly what happened with Mike Vrabel before Tennessee cut ties. Everyone assumed the rumors were exaggerated, until they weren't. And now Cleveland is in that same uncomfortable place. Because even if Stefanski somehow squeezes out a win here or there, the foundation is cracked. The offensive identity is non-existent. The development plans for their rookies are chaos. The rep distribution in training camp was beyond confusing. And the philosophy, playing not to lose instead of shaping the future, has left both quarterbacks and veterans stuck in a system with no direction. For Shedeur Sanders, the stakes are even higher. Every snap he takes is being evaluated by people who may not even be in the building next year. If a new regime arrives, they will bring their own blueprint, their own preferences, their own quarterback criteria. That means Sanders isn't just auditioning for the Browns, he's auditioning for the next coaching staff, whoever they might be. And that's why this moment feels so heavy. Cleveland has reached a crossroads. Either clean house and rebuild properly, or collapse completely under the weight of the same mistakes they've been repeating for years. What happens next won't just define a season, it will define the future of the franchise. When you strip away the noise, the hot takes, the panic, and the finger-pointing, everything happening in Cleveland right now comes down to one brutally simple choice. What do the Browns actually want their future to look like? Because this isn't just about Kevin Stefanski's job. It's not just about whether Dillon Gabriel was a mistake or whether Deshaun Watson will ever return to form. It goes much deeper than that. This is about a franchise standing at a crossroads, staring at a rookie quarterback who might be the spark they've been searching for, and trying to decide if they have the courage to build around him. Shedeur Sanders hasn't been perfect. No rookie is. But he has shown something this franchise has been missing for years: growth. Every week, his processing gets a little quicker. His pocket movement gets a little sharper. His ball security improves. And despite getting thrown into a chaotic situation with shifting play callers, uneven protection, and a staff